Have you ever felt like you can read a room before anyone says a word? You notice the shift in someone's tone, the tension in their face, the meaning behind what was not said. You can sense conflict before it happens. You can feel when something is off, even when everyone else says everything is fine. And for most of your life, maybe you thought one of two things. Either this was a gift, or something was wrong with you. But what if neither of those explanations tells the full story? What if your deep sensitivity, your pattern recognition, your ability to stay calm in chaos, and your habit of thinking several steps ahead were not random traits at all? What if they were built in the years when you did not feel fully safe? For many people, especially those who grew up around emotional instability, harsh criticism, addiction, neglect, unpredictability, or fear, the mind learns something very early. It learns to watch. It learns to scan. It learns to predict. Not because it wants to become wise, but because it wants to survive. And that is where this idea begins. Some people develop a kind of intelligence under pressure, an intelligence shaped by pain, observation, adaptation, and emotional complexity. You might call it traumatic intelligence. Now, let's be careful here. This is not about glorifying trauma. It is not about pretending hardship was a blessing. And it is not about saying suffering is necessary to become insightful. The pain was real. The cost was real. And if you would trade all of this insight for a peaceful childhood, that feeling makes perfect sense. But it is also true that many people who had to grow up too fast became unusually perceptive. They became highly aware of moods, motives, tension, danger, and change. So, if you have spent years feeling too sensitive, too guarded, too intense, too observant, or too exhausted by what you notice, this may help you understand yourself in a new way. Because sometimes what looks like overthinking is actually a nervous system that learned to survive. Sometimes what looks like distance is self-protection. Sometimes what looks like independence is a person who learned very early that relying on others felt risky. And sometimes what looks like emotional intelligence was built in an environment where missing signals was never safe. But there is an important clarification that needs to be made. Traumatic intelligence is not the same thing as healing. Being highly perceptive does not automatically mean you are at peace. Being able to read others does not mean you feel safe inside yourself. Being calm in crisis does not mean your body knows how to rest. In fact, many people who are excellent in chaos struggle the most in stillness. Why? Because chaos is familiar. A quiet room is not always restful to a nervous system that spent years preparing for impact. For some people, silence feels peaceful. For others, silence feels exposed. When there is no problem to solve, no mood to track, no tension to manage, the mind turns inward. And sometimes what it finds there is grief, fatigue, fear, or old pain that never had a chance to fully settle. That is why so many deeply perceptive people feel tired in a way others do not understand. They are not only thinking, they are monitoring. They are not only noticing, they are bracing. They are not only sensitive, they are carrying an old assignment that says, stay alert. Something could change at any moment. And over time, that creates a difficult inner contradiction. You become the person others rely on in a crisis, the one who can read people, the one who can sense what is really happening, the one who often sees problems before anyone else does. But inside, you may feel lonely, restless, misunderstood, or unable to turn it off. That is the hidden cost. And this is where another clarification matters. Not everyone who has these traits has the same story. For some, this pattern overlaps with trauma. For some, it overlaps with hypervigilance. For some, it exists alongside anxiety, complex trauma, ADHD, autism, or other forms of nervous system sensitivity. So this is not a label to force on to yourself. And it is not a diagnosis. It is simply a framework, a way of saying, there may be a reason I became like this. That reason does not erase your pain, but it may remove some of your shame, because shame says, why am I like this? Understanding says, of course I became like this. My mind was adapting. And when understanding begins, something gentle becomes possible. You can stop treating every adaptation as a flaw. You can stop insulting yourself for being too watchful, too emotional, too intense, too guarded, or too tired. You can begin to see that some of the traits you judged most harshly were built by a mind that was trying to protect you. Now here is the deeper question. If these abilities were shaped in survival mode, what do you do with them now? How do you keep the wisdom without staying trapped in the wound? This is where the healing path begins. The first step is not to erase your sensitivity. It is to understand it. You do not need to become less aware in order to heal, but you may need to become less afraid of what your awareness picks up. You may need to learn that noticing something does not mean you are responsible for fixing it. You may need to learn that reading someone accurately does not obligate you to carry them emotionally. You may need to learn that sensing danger is different from living in danger. That distinction changes everything, because when your past trained you to scan constantly, the body often reacts to discomfort as if it were an emergency. But not every tense conversation is a threat. Not every silence is rejection. Not every change in someone's mood is your job to decode. And not every feeling in your body means something bad is about to happen. Healing begins when you slowly teach yourself that awareness can remain, even when fear is no longer in charge. The second step is rest without guilt. For many trauma-shaped people, rest feels unnatural. They sit down, and the mind speeds up. They lie in bed, and their system starts scanning. They finally have peace, and suddenly they feel uneasy. That does not mean you are broken. It may simply mean your body learned that stillness was the moment when something bad could happen. So healing rest does not always begin with relax. Sometimes it begins with safer, smaller steps. A quiet cup of tea, soft music, a walk without urgency, a room with the lights low, a few minutes with no task to solve. Not perfect peace, just enough safety for the body to stop arguing with the moment. The third step is boundaries. Many deeply perceptive people become experts at understanding everyone except themselves. They know who is lying, who is hurting, who is angry, who is pretending, who needs comfort, who needs distance. But healing asks a difficult question. Can you bring that same wisdom inward? Can you notice when you are depleted? Can you tell when you are overriding your own needs? Can you recognize the relationships that keep your nervous system on high alert? Because intelligence built around reading others becomes powerful only when it is matched by honesty about yourself. The fourth step is grieving what it cost you. This part matters more than people think. Some people do not heal because they keep trying to turn pain into a superpower before they have allowed themselves to mourn. Yes, your awareness may be remarkable. Yes, your insight may run deep. Yes, your ability to remain calm under pressure may have helped many people. But you are also allowed to say, this should not have been the way I learned. You're allowed to say, I'm strong, and I'm sad it happened this way. You are allowed to say, I value what I became, and I still grieve what I needed and did not receive. That is not weakness. That is emotional truth. And emotional truth is often where real healing begins. Finally, there is one more step. Use what you learned to break the cycle. Some people spend years surviving. Then one day they realize they have a choice. They can keep living as if every room is dangerous. Or they can begin building something gentler, a gentler marriage, a gentler home, a gentler inner voice, a gentler relationship with rest, a gentler standard for what safety feels like. This does not mean becoming naive. It does not mean losing your discernment. It does not mean ignoring red flags, and it does not mean forgetting everything life taught you. It means your awareness no longer has to serve fear alone. It can serve wisdom. It can serve compassion. It can serve boundaries. It can serve peace. So if this description feels uncomfortably familiar, let this be the message you take with you. You're not weak because you feel deeply. You're not difficult because you notice everything. You're not broken because rest is hard. You are not strange because trust takes time, and you are not a failure because your nervous system still remembers what your mind has tried to move beyond. Some of the traits that confuse other people make perfect sense in the context of what you lived through. But your story does not have to end with survival. You can understand the intelligence trauma built in you without worshipping the pain that created it. You can honor the adaptation without remaining loyal to the wound. You can keep the insight, keep the depth, keep the discernment, keep the compassion, and still learn, slowly, patiently, truthfully, how to rest. Because maybe the next chapter of your life is not about becoming someone else. Maybe it is about finally becoming safe enough to be fully yourself.